The stars around Kepler Station burned with the light of war. Explosions lit up the darkness as enemy ships fired their weapons at the small human outpost. The station shook with each hit, its metal walls groaning under the attack. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge watching the battle through the main screen. Her uniform was dirty and torn from 3 days of fighting. Dark circles under her eyes showed how little sleep she had gotten. Around her, the crew worked at their stations, trying to keep the station's weapons and shields working. "Shield strength down to 30%, called out Lieutenant Torres from his position. His voice was tired but steady. "The forward cannon is offline. Engineering says they need at least an hour to fix it." Sarah nodded but said nothing. ND, hour was time they did not have. Outside the station, the enemy fleet filled the space around them. The Zephyrian ships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. Their hulls were dark and wet, pulsing with strange lights. More than 200 of these ships surrounded Kepler Station. The Zephyrians were not like humans or any of the other species in the galaxy. They looked like huge bugs that walked on 2 legs. Their skin was hard like shells and they had 4 arms with sharp claws. Their eyes were black and showed no mercy. They had come to take the station and everything in it. Admiral HFY watched the battle from his own ship. He was not human but had been fighting alongside them for many years. His people, the Saurians, looked like walking lizards. They were smart and good at war, but even HFY was worried about this fight. "The humans are brave," he said to his second in command. "But bravery will not stop those weapons." His ship was part of the defense fleet around Kepler Station. There were ships from many different species there. The Ethereals had sent their crystal ships that moved like ghosts through space. The Corvin Union had brought their heavy cruisers with thick armor. Even some of the smaller species had sent what ships they could, but it was not enough. The Zephyrian fleet was too big and too strong. On the main communication channel, reporters from across the galaxy were talking about the battle. They came from the Neutral Commerce Guild, a group that stayed out of wars but recorded everything for history. Their voices filled the airwaves. "This is reporter Clixton from the Guild Ship Observer. The human station continues to fight, but experts say they cannot last much longer. The Zephyrians have been attacking for 72 hours without stopping." Another voice joined in. "This is the first time we have seen humans face such a large enemy fleet alone. Will they surrender, or will they fight to the end?" The questions made Admiral HFY angry. These reporters acted like they were watching a game instead of real people dying. But he understood why they were interested. Humans were still new to the galaxy. They had only made contact with other species 50 years ago. Many people wanted to see how tough they really were. Queen Admiral Escobar commanded the Zephyrian fleet from her massive ship. It was bigger than any other vessel in the system. Shaped like a giant spider with weapons growing from its body like extra legs, she sat in her command chamber, her 4 arms working different controls at the same time. "Send the surrender message again," she ordered. Her voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Tell them they have one more chance to give up." My message went out to Kepler Station on all channels. "Humans of Kepler Station, this is Queen Admiral Escobar of the Zephyrian hegemony. Your position is hopeless. Surrender now and we will allow your people to leave safely. Continue fighting, and we will take the station by force. You have 10 minutes to decide." On the station's bridge, Sarah Chen listened to the message. Her crew looked at her, waiting for orders. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also determination. These people had chosen to serve on the edge of human space, far from home and safety. "Commander," Lieutenant Torres said quietly, "maybe we should think about the offer. The civilians on the station." Sarah held up her hand to stop him. She had been thinking about those same people. There were families on Kepler Station. Scientists, engineers, shopkeepers, and their children. More than 10,000 people who had trusted her to protect them. But she also knew what would happen if they surrendered. The Zephyrians did not keep their promises. They would take the humans as slaves and use the station for their own purposes. It would give them a base to attack deeper into human space. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship," Sarah ordered. The communications officer pressed some buttons. "Channel open, Commander." Sarah looked directly at the main screen, knowing her words would be heard not just by the enemy but by everyone listening across the galaxy. "Queen Admiral Escobar, this is Commander Sarah Chen of Kepler Station. Your offer is rejected. We will not surrender." There was silence for a moment. Then Escobar's harsh voice came through the speakers. "Then you choose to die, human. We will take your station and pick through your bones." "Maybe," Sarah said calmly. "But reinforcements are coming. When they get here, you'll wish you had left while you still could." Admiral Vexhai heard those words and felt confused. He knew where all the human fleets were. The nearest one was 6 days away, even at maximum speed. There were no reinforcements coming. The reporters were excited by Sarah's words. They started talking quickly into their microphones, telling their audiences about the human commander's bold claim. But most of the experts they talked to shook their heads. "It's impossible," said one military analyst. "The humans have no ships close enough to help. Commander Chen is either lying or hoping for a miracle." Queen Admiral Siskovar laughed when she heard about reinforcements. It sounded like metal grinding together. "Let them come. We will destroy them like we will destroy this station." She gave orders to her fleet. The Zephyrian ships moved closer to Kepler Station, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Bioplasma cannons grew from their hulls like tumors, glowing with green fire. These weapons could melt through the strongest armor in seconds. The station's defenders did what they could. They fired their missiles and laser cannons at the enemy ships. Sometimes they scored hits, but the Zephyrian hulls healed themselves quickly. It was like trying to fight a monster that could grow back any part you cut off. As the battle continued, people across the galaxy watched and waited. Some hoped the humans would find a way to win. Others bet on how long they would last. The Zephyrians were confident they would have the station by morning, but Sarah Chen stood on her bridge watching the stars and waiting. She had not lied about reinforcements. Deep in her heart, she believed help was coming. She just hoped it would arrive before her people ran out of time. The battle for Kepler Station was about more than one outpost. It was a test of human will against impossible odds. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, something was moving toward them at speeds no one thought possible. The second day of the siege began with more bad news. The station's main power core was running low. Half of the defense guns were offline, and the shield generators were failing one by one. Commander Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of a Kepler station, seeing the tired faces of her people. In the medical bay, doctors worked on wounded soldiers and civilians. The smell of burnt metal and medical supplies filled the air. Sarah stopped to talk to some of the injured, telling them they were doing great and that help was coming. She hoped her voice sounded more confident than she felt. "Commander, Doctor," Martinez said as she prepared to leave. "We're running out of medical supplies, and some of these people need treatment we can't provide here." Sarah nodded. "Do what you can, Doctor. This will be over soon." She hoped that was true. Back on the bridge, Lieutenant Torres was studying the sensor readings. The Zephyrian fleet had moved even closer during the night. Their ships formed a perfect circle around the station, blocking any chance of escape. "Any word from Earth Command?" Sarah asked. "Nothing new," Torres replied. "Admiral Harrison says the nearest fleet is still 5 days out. He suggests we consider evacuation." Sarah almost laughed. Evacuation to where? The Zephyrian ships would destroy any transport that tried to leave. They were trapped like mice in a cage, waiting for the cat to get hungry enough to pounce. Admiral Vexhai had spent the night moving his ships to better positions. His Saurian engineers had worked hard to repair damage from yesterday's fighting, but he knew it would not be enough. The Zephyrians were just playing with them now like a predator that enjoys watching its prey suffer. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "I'm getting something strange on long-range scanners." Vexhai walked over to look at the readings. At the very edge of the system, something had appeared. It looked like a ship dropping out of faster-than-light travel, but the signature was wrong. "What type of ship is it?" he asked. The officer shook his head. "I don't know, sir. The energy pattern doesn't match anything in our database. It's not Zephyrian, not ethereal, not Corvin. It might be human, but it's using some kind of drive system I've never seen. Across the system, other ships were picking up the same reading. The reporters from the Neutral Commerce Guild were excited by this new development. They started broadcasting updates to their audiences. This is reporter Clixtan with breaking news. A single unidentified vessel has appeared at the edge of the Kepler system. Military experts are trying to determine its origin and purpose. Queen Admiral Siskovar heard the reports and checked her own sensors. Her ship's computers also could not identify the newcomer. This annoyed her. The Zephyrian database was one of the most complete in the galaxy. Every known ship type was recorded there. Send a squadron to investigate, she ordered. If it's another human ship coming to help, destroy it before it gets close. But her sensor officers were confused by what they were seeing. The unknown ship was moving toward them, but not at normal space speeds. It seemed to be jumping from point to point, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Queen Admiral, her chief sensor operator, said nervously. The ship is using some kind of space folding technology. Our computers say it should be impossible. Skavar's forearms clicked impatiently. Nothing is impossible. Find out what it is and how to destroy it. Meanwhile, the mysterious ship was getting closer. As it moved through space, it began broadcasting on all communication channels. The message was simple but shocking. This is the UES Prometheus. Stand down immediately or face the consequences. The words reached every ship in the system at the same time. On Kepler Station, Sarah Chen felt her heart jump. She had never heard of any ship called Prometheus in the human fleet. But the voice, speaking, was definitely human with an accent she could not place. Torres, check the fleet registry, she ordered. Find everything you can about the UES Prometheus. Torres worked quickly at his console, searching through all available databases. After several minutes, he looked up with confusion. Commander, there's no record of any human ship with that name. Not in active service, not in construction, not even in the planning stages. Sarah frowned. Where had this ship come from? And why was it telling the entire Zephyrian fleet to stand down? One ship against more than 200 seemed like suicide. Admiral Vexhai was having the same thoughts. His communications officer had contacted every allied ship in the system, but none of them knew anything about the Prometheus. It was a mystery that made no sense. Sir? His sensor officer called out again. I'm getting a better reading on the unknown ship. It appears to be cruiser-sized, maybe 400 meters long. No escort vessels detected. Vexhai stared at the readings. A single cruiser was challenging the entire Zephyrian armada. Either the humans had gone crazy or they knew something nobody else did. The reporters were going wild with speculation. Their voices filled the communication channels as they tried to explain what was happening. This is unprecedented, one expert said. A single human vessel is demanding that a fleet of over 200 ships surrender. Either this is a desperate bluff, or the humans have developed some kind of new weapon technology. Queen Admiral Siskovar decided she had heard enough. She gave orders to her squadron commanders. Intercept and destroy the human ship before it gets closer. Use overwhelming force. I want to send a message to anyone else who might be watching. 12 of her heavy destroyers broke away from the main fleet and moved toward the approaching Prometheus. These were powerful ships, each one capable of destroying several human cruisers in normal combat. Their bioplasma cannons charged with deadly energy, ready to turn the mysterious newcomer into space dust. But as the Zephyrian ships closed the distance, something strange happened. The Prometheus did not try to run or hide. It did not launch fighters or activate any visible defense systems. It just kept moving toward them at steady speed, as if 12 heavy warships were not a threat at all. This is Squadron Leader Vaktal to unknown human vessel, came a transmission from the lead Zephyrian ship. You are in violation of hegemony space and interfering with a military operation. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The response from the Prometheus was calm and clear. This is Captain Morrison of the UES Prometheus. You have 30 seconds to change course and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. The Zephyrian pilots made sounds that were like laughing. If insects could laugh. One small human ship was threatening them? It was either very brave or very stupid. Squadron leader Vaktal gave the order to fire. All 12 ships opened up with their bioplasma cannons at the same time. Streams of green energy flew through space toward the Prometheus, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Everyone watching held their breath, waiting to see the human ship torn apart. The reporters prepared to describe the quick end of the mysterious vessel. Even Sarah Chen closed her eyes, not wanting to see another human ship destroyed. But when the weapons hit, something impossible happened. The plasma bolts struck an invisible barrier around the Prometheus and simply stopped. For a moment, the energy hung in space like green lightning frozen in time. Then suddenly all that power reversed direction and flew back toward the Zephyrian ships. But now it was somehow stronger, brighter, and more deadly than before. The 12 heavy destroyers had no time to react. Their own weapons reflected back at them with increased power, tore through their hulls like paper. In seconds, all 12 ships were reduced to glowing debris scattered across space. Silence fell over the battlefield. Every ship, every station, every reporter stopped talking. What they had just seen was impossible according to every law of war, physics they knew. Energy shields could absorb or deflect weapons, but they could not reflect them back with greater power than they had originally. Queen Admiral Skvar stared at her sensors, not believing what they told her. 12 of her best ships had been destroyed by their own weapons. The human vessel continued approaching, undamaged and seemingly unconcerned by what had just happened. For the first time since the battle began, fear crept into her thoughts. What kind of ship was this Prometheus? And what other impossible things could it do? The destruction of 12 Zephyrian ships in seconds had changed everything. Across the system, military commanders tried to understand what they had just witnessed. The reporters fell silent for the first time since the battle began, their voices caught in their throats. Queen Admiral Seskavar felt something she had never experienced before. Uncertainty. In all her battles across the galaxy, she had never seen weapons that could do what the Prometheus had just done. Her claws clicked nervously against her command chair as she watched the human ship continue its approach. "Analysis report," she demanded from her science officers. "Queen Admiral, our computers cannot explain what happened," came the nervous reply. "The energy reflection appears to violate several fundamental laws of physics. The returned plasma was approximately 3 times stronger than what we fired." Skavar's eyes narrowed. Nothing violated physics. There had to be an explanation. "Send 20 ships this time. Hit it with everything at maximum range. If it can only reflect a certain amount of energy, we'll overwhelm it." But even as she gave the order, doubt crept into her voice. What if they couldn't overwhelm it? What if this mysterious human ship had capabilities beyond anything they had ever faced? The Prometheus continued moving through space, and as it got closer, the observers could see it more clearly. What they saw confused them even more. The ship's hull seemed to shift and change as they watched. Parts of it became transparent while other sections grew thicker. Weapon ports appeared and disappeared like they were being grown rather than built. Admiral Vexhai had his best sensor officers studying the approaching vessel. Their reports made no sense. "Sir, the ship appears to be rebuilding itself as we watch," reported his chief science officer. "The hull composition is changing, constantly. Our scanners detect metals that shouldn't exist, energy patterns that don't match any known technology. Could it be some kind of shape-shifting alien vessel pretending to be human?" Vexhai asked. "No, sir. The communication signals are definitely human, and our database confirms the voice patterns match Earth regional dialects. But the technology, it's like nothing we've ever seen." On Kepler Station, Commander Sarah Chen was having similar thoughts. She had managed to get a better look at the Prometheus through the station's telescopes, and what she saw made her wonder if her reinforcements were really human at all. "Torres, are you sure our databases are complete?" she asked. "Could there be human ships we don't know about?" Lieutenant Torres shook his head. "Commander, I've checked everything. Every human ship ever built is in our records. The Prometheus doesn't exist in any official capacity." Sarah stared at the screen showing the approaching vessel. If it wasn't in the official records, where had it come from? And how did humans develop technology that could reflect enemy weapons with increased power? 20 Zephyrian ships moved to intercept the Prometheus, spreading out in a battle formation. These were not just destroyers, but heavy cruisers and battleships, vessels that could destroy entire fleets in normal combat. Their bioplasma cannons were charged to maximum power, and they also prepared kinetic weapons and gravity bombs. Squadron Commander Thakis led the attack group. She was one of Siskovar's best officers, with hundreds of victories to her name. But as she watched the human ship approach, she felt something unusual. Fear. All ships, prepare to fire on my command, she ordered. Hit it with everything at the same time. Don't give it a chance to reflect our weapons. The Prometheus seemed to sense the incoming attack. Suddenly its hull began changing more rapidly. Weapon systems that looked like nothing in any database emerged from its surface. Some looked like traditional energy cannons, but others defied description. There were devices that seemed to bend space around them, weapons that appeared to be made of pure light, and systems that hurt to look at directly. Fire! Thakis commanded. 20 warships unleashed their full firepower at the same time. Bioplasma, kinetic rounds, gravity bombs, and energy beams filled the space between them and the Prometheus. It was enough destructive power to crack a moon in half. But the human ship did something that made everyone watching question their sanity. Instead of trying to avoid the incoming fire, it flew straight into it. The various weapons struck its hull, and for a moment it looked like the Prometheus was being torn apart. Then the ship's hull began to glow. The weapons hitting it seemed to be absorbed into the metal itself. The ship grew brighter and brighter until it was painful to look at directly. Energy patterns ran across its surface like veins of light. When the Prometheus fired back, the weapons it used were completely different from anything anyone had ever seen. Beams of energy that seemed to phase in and out of reality struck the Zephyrian ships. These beams passed right through their shields as if they weren't there and struck the hulls directly. But that wasn't the strangest part. Some of the projectiles the Prometheus fired seemed to multiply as they flew through space. One missile became 2, then 4, then 8, until each of the 20 enemy ships was facing dozens of incoming weapons. Other weapons seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Energy waves that looked like ripples in space itself washed over the Zephyrian formation. The ships caught in these waves simply stopped working. Their engines shut down, their weapons went silent, and their life support systems failed. The crews were alive but helpless, floating in dead ships. Within minutes, all 20 Zephyrian vessels were either destroyed or disabled. The Prometheus continued its approach, apparently undamaged and somehow looking stronger than before. Queen Admiral Siskovar watched the destruction of her second attack group with growing horror. 42 of her ships had been lost, and the human vessel seemed to be getting more powerful with each attack. How is this possible? She whispered to herself. Her science officers had no answers. The energy readings they were getting from the Prometheus made no sense. It appeared to be using the attacks against it as fuel for its own weapon systems. Every shot that hit it made it stronger. The reporters covering the battle had finally found their voices again, but their words came out in stutters and gasps. This is impossible, reporter Clixton managed to say. The human ship is using weapons that shouldn't exist. Our science experts are saying this violates everything we know about physics and engineering. Across the galaxy, people watched their screens in amazement and fear. The humans, who had been seen as brave but technologically inferior, had just demonstrated weapons that seemed to come from another universe entirely. Admiral Vexhai felt his world changing as he watched the battle. Everything he thought he knew about human capabilities was wrong. If they could build ships like the Prometheus, what else were they capable of? Get me a direct line to Earth Command, he ordered his communications officer. I need to know where this ship came from. But Earth Command was just as confused as everyone else. Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the communication system. Admiral Vexhai, we have no information about any ship called Prometheus. This is as much a surprise to us as it is to you. The implications of those words hit everyone at the same time. If Earth Command didn't know about the Prometheus, then where had it come from? Were there humans somewhere in the galaxy that even Earth didn't know about? Queen Admiral SCI-FI made a decision that went against every instinct she had. Instead of sending more ships to attack, she ordered her entire fleet to focus their fire on the single human vessel at the same time. Over 150 remaining warships prepared to unleash the kind of firepower that could destroy a small planet. If we can't understand it, we'll overwhelm it, she declared. No shield or weapon system can handle the combined fire of our entire fleet. But, as she gave the order, SCI-FI couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to make the worst mistake of her military career. The Prometheus had already proven that normal rules didn't apply to it. What would happen when they gave it the power of an entire fleet to absorb and reflect? The answer would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The command went out across the Zephyrian fleet like wildfire. Every remaining ship turned its weapons toward the approaching Prometheus. Bioplasma cannons grew from hulls like angry flowers, gravity bombs armed themselves, and kinetic weapons loaded their deadliest rounds. More than 150 warships prepared to fire at the same target. Queen Admiral SCI-FI watched her fleet move into position. This was the largest concentration of firepower the Zephyrian hegemony had ever assembled in one place. The combined weapons of her armada could crack planets and boil away atmospheres. Surely no single ship, no matter how advanced, could survive. What was coming? All ships report ready, her communications officer announced. Fire everything, SCI-FI ordered. Destroy that ship and end this madness. The space around Kepler Station lit up like a new star being born. Hundreds of weapons fired at once, sending streams of deadly energy toward the Prometheus. The amount of firepower crossing that distance was beyond anything most people had ever imagined possible. But as the massive attack reached its target, something happened that made every observer question their understanding of reality itself. The Prometheus didn't just absorb the incoming fire like before. Its hull began to change in ways that hurt to look at. The ship seemed to become larger and smaller at the same time, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The weapons, fire struck the vessel and simply disappeared. Not reflected, not absorbed, but gone as if it had never existed. The energy patterns around the Prometheus grew so complex that sensor equipment across the system began to fail just trying to record them. Then the human ship began to glow with power that came from somewhere beyond normal space. When it finally responded to the attack, what it unleashed was not weapons in any sense that the galactic community understood. Waves of energy that looked like cracks in reality itself spread out from the Prometheus. These waves didn't destroy the Zephyrian ships. Instead, they simply turned off everything that made them work. Engines stopped, weapons powered down, life support systems went silent, and even the biological components of the ships went into some kind of sleep state. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Zephyrian armada was floating helpless in space. Over 150 warships had been reduced to harmless debris, their crews alive but unable to move or fight. The silence that followed was more frightening than any explosion could have been. Across the galaxy, desperate messages were being sent between governments and military commands. Everyone wanted answers about the Prometheus and its impossible capabilities. Deep in the archives of the oldest civilizations, researchers began looking for any reference to technology like what they had just witnessed. It was an ancient ethereal librarian who found the first clue. In records that had been sealed for over a century, she discovered mentions of humans who had disappeared beyond the galactic rim before first contact had been established. Here, she said to her supervisor, pointing at text written in the old script. References to the Silent Ones, humans who rejected the idea of joining galactic civilization and went into the dark spaces between galaxies. The supervisor leaned closer to read the faded words. It says they were scientists and engineers who believed humanity's destiny was to transcend the limits of known physics. They took their ships and knowledge into unexplored space and were never heard from again. This information spread quickly through diplomatic channels. Within hours, representatives from dozens of species were studying the ancient records, trying to understand what they meant. On Earth, Admiral Harrison was in an emergency meeting with the Planetary Council. The discovery of the old records had reached them too, and the implications were staggering. "You're telling me," said Counselor Williams, "that there are humans out there who have been developing technology in secret for over 100 years? Admiral, Harrison nodded grimly. The records from the early colonial period mention several groups who refused to accept the limitations placed on human expansion. They called themselves names like the Outbound Project and the Beyond Initiative. We thought they had all died in the deep space expeditions." "Apparently not," Williams replied. "If the Prometheus is any example of what they've accomplished, they've surpassed anything we thought possible." Back at Kepler Station, Commander Sarah Chen was trying to establish contact with the mysterious ship that had saved them. The Prometheus had positioned itself near the station, its strange hull still shifting and changing as she watched. "UES, Prometheus, this is Commander Chen of Kepler Station. Please respond." For several minutes there was no answer. Then a voice came through the speakers, clear and unmistakably human, but with an accent that was hard to place. "Commander Chen, this is Captain Morrison of the Prometheus. It's good to meet you even under these circumstances." Sarah felt relief flood through her. Whatever the Prometheus was, whoever these people were, they were human. "Captain Morrison, I need to ask, where did you come from? Your ship isn't in any of our records." There was a pause before Morrison answered. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of sadness and longing. "Commander, we come from the places your maps mark as empty space. We are the descendants of humans who chose a different path, long before your people knew they were not alone in the galaxy." "The Silent Ones," Sarah whispered, remembering the reports that had been coming in from across the galaxy. "Yes," Morrison confirmed. "While your ancestors learned to follow galactic law and work within established scientific principles, ours chose to push beyond all known limits. We've spent over a century out there in the dark, learning things that the galaxy doesn't think are possible." Admiral Vex High had been listening to the conversation from his ship. He joined the communication channel with Sarah's permission. "Captain Morrison, I am Admiral Vex High of the Saurian Defense Force. The technology your ship displayed today, it appears to violate several fundamental laws of physics. How is this possible?" Morrison's laugh carried a note of something that might have been pity. "Admiral, your fundamental laws are just the limits of what the galaxy has discovered so far. When you're not bound by the rules that others insist are unbreakable, you find that reality is much more flexible than anyone imagines." The implications of those words hit everyone listening like a physical blow. If the humans beyond the rim had developed technology that could manipulate reality itself, what did that mean for the balance of power in the galaxy? Reporter Clixton was broadcasting live to billions of viewers across known space. Her voice shook as she tried to explain what was happening. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species, we are witnessing a moment that will change galactic history forever. The human species, who we thought we understood, have revealed capabilities that exceed our wildest theories about advanced technology. Honorary days." Her flagship, Queen Admiral Sikvar, listened to the reports coming from across the galaxy. Her entire fleet was helpless, floating in space like toys that had run out of power. But more frightening than her military defeat was the realization of what it meant. The humans had been holding back. All this time, while the galaxy thought of them as newcomers who were catching up to established civilizations, they had secretly surpassed everyone. The Prometheus wasn't just advanced technology. It represented a completely different approach to science and engineering. "Queen Admiral," her second-in-command said quietly, "what are your orders?" Escobar looked at the readings from her dead fleet, then at the impossible human ship that had defeated them without taking any damage. For the first time in her career, she had no idea what to do. The galaxy was about to learn that the species they thought they knew had been hiding secrets that would reshape everything they believed about power, technology, and the limits of what was possible. The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the usual debris fields and emergency rescues, space around Kepler Station was filled with perfectly intact but completely powerless ships. The entire Zephyrian armada floated like sleeping giants, their crews alive but unable to move or communicate. Captain Morrison's voice came across all communication channels, calm and clear as if he had just finished a routine training exercise instead of defeating over 200 warships single-handedly. This is the UES Prometheus to all vessels in this system. The siege of Kepler Station is over. Any further aggression against human interests will be met with appropriate escalation. Those words sent shivers through military commanders across the galaxy. If this was what humans considered appropriate response to a siege, what would they do if truly threatened? Queen Admiral SCI-FI found herself in a situation no Zephyrian commander had ever faced before. Her entire fleet was helpless, but she and her crews were unharmed. The humans could have killed them all, but they had chosen a different path. It was a kind of mercy that the Zephyrian military code had no words for. Her communication systems were still working, though everything else was dead. She opened a channel to the Prometheus, her voice smaller than it had ever been. "Human vessel, this is Queen Admiral SCI-FI. I formally surrender my fleet to your authority." Morrison's response was swift but not unkind. "Queen Admiral, your surrender is accepted. Your ships will be restored to minimal power in 1 hour. You will then have 24 hours to leave this system and never return. Any Zephyrian vessel that approaches human space in the future will face the same fate as your fleet today." "Understood," SCI-FI replied. She had commanded fleets that conquered entire worlds, but she had never been so thoroughly defeated by a single ship. "May I ask, how many ships like yours exist?" There was a long pause before Morrison answered, and when he did, his words chilled every listener to the bone. "That, Queen Admiral, is information your people are not ready to know." Across the galaxy, emergency sessions were being called by every major government. The revelation that humans had secret colonies beyond known space, equipped with reality-defying technology, had turned the political landscape upside down overnight. The Ethereal High Council, which had existed for thousands of years and considered itself the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, held an unprecedented emergency meeting. Their crystal ships, once thought to be the pinnacle of engineering, now seemed primitive compared to what the Prometheus had displayed. "The humans have been among us for 50 years, said Council Leader Zephi, her voice like singing glass. In all that time, they appeared to be learning from us, following our lead in technology and diplomacy. We never suspected they had capabilities that exceeded our own. Council Member Veltar nodded gravely. The question now is what this means for our position in the galactic community. If the humans have been holding back this much power, what are their true intentions? Similar conversations were happening in the capitals of every major species. The Corvin Union called back all their fleets from human borders. The Nexus Syndicate immediately began revising their trade agreements to favor human interests. Even the mighty Titan Collective, whose ships were the size of small moons, started treating human diplomatic messages with new respect. On Earth, the revelation about the Silent Ones had sent shockwaves through the government and military. Admiral Harrison found himself in the uncomfortable position of having to explain to the Planetary Council why Earth Command knew nothing about their own species' greatest achievement. Sir, reported his intelligence chief, we've been going through the old colonial records. There were at least 6 major expeditions that left Earth in the early 2100s before we made contact with the Ethereals. All of them were officially listed as lost. Admiral Harrison studied the files. The Outbound Project, the Beyond Initiative, the Deep Reach Expedition, these were some of our brightest scientists and engineers. If they survived and have been developing technology for over a century, then we're looking at human capabilities that even we don't understand, the intelligence chief finished. Back at Kepler Station, Commander Sarah Chen was preparing for a conversation that would change her life forever. The Prometheus had requested a private communication channel just between her and Captain Morrison. Commander, Morrison's voice was warm but carried the weight of years. I wanted to speak with you personally before we depart. Captain, I need to know, Sarah said. Are there more ships like yours? More humans out there beyond our borders? Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words painted a picture that Sarah could barely comprehend. Commander, what you call human space is just the beginning. Beyond the rim, in the spaces between galaxies, There are colonies that would seem like magic to your people. We've learned to reshape matter at the atomic level, to bend space and time to our will, to build ships that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Sarah felt her worldview shifting. Why didn't you ever contact Earth? Why stay hidden? Because we knew this day would come, Morrison replied. We knew that eventually, humanity would face a threat that required more than conventional weapons to defeat. We've been watching, waiting, preparing for the moment when our people needed protection. And now? Now the galaxy knows that humanity is not what they thought we were. Trade agreements will be renegotiated, military alliances will shift, and diplomatic relationships will be rebuilt from the ground up. Your people will benefit from this knowledge, but they must be careful not to let it go to their heads. As if to emphasize his point, Morrison's next words carried a warning that sent chills down Sarah's spine. Commander, the Prometheus is not alone. There are signals beginning to appear on long-range sensors across human space. Other ships are moving toward inhabited systems, not to threaten anyone, but to make a statement. The galaxy needed to understand that humanity has friends in very high places. Sarah looked at her sensor readings and saw what he meant. Across human territory, mysterious signatures were appearing on the edges of solar systems. Ships that used the same impossible technology as the Prometheus were positioning themselves near human colonies and trade routes. The message was clear to anyone with the intelligence to understand it. Humanity was under protection from forces that could rewrite the laws of physics themselves. In the days that followed, the galaxy watched as trade routes shifted, military budgets were recalculated, and diplomatic protocols were rewritten. Species that had looked down on humans as junior partners now competed to offer the most favorable agreements. The balance of power had shifted overnight. Reporter Clickston filed her final report on the Battle of Kepler Station with words that would be remembered for generations. What we witnessed here was not just a military victory, but the revelation of a truth that changes everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. The humans, who we believed were newcomers trying to find their place among established civilizations, have shown us that they were never catching up to us at all. They had already surpassed us and were simply waiting for the right moment to reveal their true capabilities. As the Prometheus prepared to depart, Captain Morrison sent one final message to Commander Chen. This one was private, meant only for her. Sarah, tell your people that the outer colonies remember their origins. Earth's children are never truly alone. We chose a different path long ago, but we never forgot where we came from. When humanity needs us, we will answer. The ship that had changed galactic history began to fade from normal space, using the same impossible technology that had brought it to Kepler Station. As it disappeared, sensors across the system detected something that would haunt military analysts for years to come. For just a moment, the readings suggested that there weren't just other ships like the Prometheus out there in the dark between stars. There were fleets of them, entire armadas of vessels that used technology beyond current understanding, all watching and waiting in the spaces that most people considered empty. The galaxy had learned that the species they thought they understood had been hiding secrets that dwarfed every other civilization's greatest achievements. The question that would drive politics and military planning for decades to come was simple but terrifying. If the humans could do this much while trying to fit in with galactic society, what could they accomplish if they ever decided to stop holding back? The age of humanity being the newcomers to galactic civilization was over. The age of everyone else trying to understand their place in a human-influenced galaxy had begun.
Captain Jack Mason stared at the alien message on the big screen. His hands gripped the edge of the control panel until his knuckles turned white. Around him, the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, Earth's last working military ship, fell silent. No one dared to speak as the alien's cold, multi-tone voice finished its speech. You have 30 Earth days to surrender your planet's resources. After that time, we will destroy what remains of your civilization. There will be no further warnings. The screen went black. For a moment, only the soft beeping of the ship's systems broke the silence. Play it again, Mason ordered, his voice rough. He ran a hand through his short gray hair, looking older than his 45 years. Lieutenant Amy Parker, the communications officer, nodded and tapped her screen. The alien appeared again, tall, with blue-gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its mouth moved strangely as it spoke, like the words didn't match its lips. This time, Mason watched the crew's faces instead of the message. Fear, anger, defeat. The same emotions that had been cycling through his own mind since the Stellar Coalition had first appeared in Earth's skies 2 weeks ago. Their first attack had been swift and deadly. In less than 6 hours, they had destroyed every major military base on the planet. The world's navies now lay at the bottom of the oceans. Air forces were reduced to burning scrap. Land armies scattered and broken. The Defiant had survived only because it had been underwater during the initial attack, testing a new stealth system. Even so, the ship had taken damage. They were limping along with half-working engines and weapons that probably couldn't hurt a Coalition rowboat, if aliens even had such things. "Sir," Parker said after the message ended again, "we're being called to an emergency meeting. All surviving military leaders. The president will be there." Mason nodded. "Tell them we're on our way." The meeting took place in an underground bunker beneath what was left of Washington, D.C. representatives from countries around the world sat around a large table, their faces lit by the harsh white lights overhead. Many joined through video links, their images flickering on screens around the room. President Williams looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "I won't waste time. We need options." General Roberts, the highest-ranking military officer still alive, stood up. His uniform was still dusty from the rescue operation that had pulled him from the ruins of the Pentagon. "Madam President, I've reviewed all our remaining military capabilities," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "We cannot win this fight. The Coalition's technology is at least a century ahead of ours. Their ships have shields that our weapons can't penetrate. Their weapons cut through our strongest armor like it's paper." "So you're suggesting surrender?" asked the Chinese representative, her face hard on the video screen. "I'm suggesting reality," Roberts replied. "We've lost 85% of our military power. What remains isn't enough to defend a small city, let alone the planet." The room erupted in angry voices. Mason sat quietly, watching. He had been invited as the captain of Earth's last naval vessel, but he wasn't a high-ranking officer. Not until 2 weeks ago, when everyone above him had died. Before the invasion, he had been a salvage expert, brought into the Navy to help reuse old equipment during budget cuts. Salvage, taking broken things and making them useful again. An idea began to form in his mind. A crazy, impossible idea. "Excuse me," he said, standing up. No one noticed at first, until President Williams held up her hand for silence. "Captain Mason has the floor," she said. Mason cleared his throat. "The general is right that we can't win with what we have now. But maybe we don't need to use what we have. Maybe we need to build something new." "Build what?" Roberts asked, frowning. "We don't have time to develop new technology." "Not develop. Steal." Mason pointed to the screen showing images of downed Coalition ships. "Every time they attack us, they leave pieces behind. Their ships crash. Parts fall off. What if we could use those parts? Use alien technology we don't understand?" The Russian representative scoffed. "We don't need to understand all of it," Mason argued. "Just enough to make it work. Look, before I joined the Navy, I ran a salvage operation in the Pacific. My team and I could take apart ships from a dozen different countries and put them back together in new ways." President Williams leaned forward. "What exactly are you suggesting, Captain?" "I'm suggesting we build our own warship, using Coalition tech mixed with our own. Something they've never seen before because no one would be crazy enough to try it." Mason's eyes lit up as he spoke, the plan taking shape in his mind. They think in straight lines. Everything perfect and planned. But humans? We're messy. We improvise. We take what's broken and make it work again. Even if this were possible, General Roberts said slowly, we'd need a team, resources, a secure location. I have people I trust. Engineers, mechanics, people who can think outside the box. Mason pulled out his tablet and opened a map. And I know the perfect spot. The Pacific Ship Graveyard. It's remote, filled with materials we can use, and the Coalition hit it early in their attack, so they probably won't look there again. The room fell silent as everyone considered his words. Mason could see the doubt on their faces, but he could also see something else, a tiny spark of hope. President Williams took a deep breath. This plan is unorthodox. With respect, Madam President, Mason said, Orthodox got most of our military killed. We need something the Coalition won't expect. After a long pause, she nodded. How many people do you need? 50. The best engineers and technicians still alive. And permission to use whatever resources we can find. You'll have it. But Captain, she fixed him with a steady gaze, you understand what's at stake here. Mason thought of his home in Nevada, now just a crater. Of his brother's family, missing since the first attack. Of Earth. Yes, Madam President. I do. 3 days later, Mason stood on the deck of a rusty cargo ship, looking out at the Pacific Ship Graveyard. Once, it had been where old vessels came to be taken apart. Now, it was also filled with the smoking remains of Earth's Navy and several downed Coalition craft. Beside him stood Dr. Emma Reynolds, a thin woman with wild red hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had been fired from NASA 5 years ago for experiments deemed too risky. Now her expertise in propulsion systems might save the world. You really think we can build a warship from this junk? She asked, gesturing at the field of wreckage spread out before them. Mason pulled a piece of twisted metal from a nearby pile. It was part of a Coalition ship, its surface covered in strange markings that seemed to glow faintly. Their stuff still works even when it's broken, he said. That gives us an advantage they don't expect. Tom Rivera, a former black market tech dealer who now served as Mason's second-in-command, joined them. Teams ready to start salvage operations, Captain. Mason nodded, looking at the determined faces of his makeshift crew. Most weren't military. They were engineers, mechanics, hackers, people who knew how to make do with what they had. 27 days, he said. That's how long we have to build a warship that can save Earth. He held up the alien fragment. Let's show these Coalition bastards what humans can do with a pile of junk and a deadline. The morning sun glinted off the thousands of metal pieces scattered across the Pacific Ship Graveyard. For the past 5 days, Mason's team had worked nonstop, sorting through wreckage and salvaging anything useful. Their makeshift camp buzzed with activity as people carried parts, welded metal, and tested equipment. We need more power cells, Emma Reynolds said, wiping sweat from her forehead. She pointed to a diagram on her tablet. The Coalition ships use some kind of energy source I'd never seen before. It's like a battery, but it never seems to run out. Mason nodded, looking at the strange blue glowing cylinder they had pulled from a downed alien fighter. How many do we need? At least 5 more of the big ones to power the main systems. Mason turned to Rivera. Take Team B and check the northern section. There was a larger Coalition ship that went down there. Rivera nodded and gathered his team. As they left, Mason watched Dr. Reynolds examining the alien power cell with a mix of frustration and wonder. Something wrong? He asked. Everything about their technology is weird, she said. It's not just advanced. It's like they think differently than we do. She tapped the power cell. Look at this. No visible connectors, no radiation, no heat. But it powers systems 10 times more efficiently than our best tech. Mason picked up the cylinder, feeling its slight vibration. Can you make it work with our systems? Emma smiled, the kind of smile that made Mason think of a kid with a new toy. Oh, I'll make it work. I just might blow us all up the first few times I try. By the end of the first week, they had the basic outline of a ship. It wasn't pretty. A skeletal frame cobbled together from Earth Navy vessels, with alien components grafted onto it like strange metal tumors. But it was taking shape. Lisa Wong, their chief engineer, had created a central command area using the bridge from a destroyed aircraft carrier. Screens salvaged from both human and alien vessels lined the walls, displaying a mix of English text and strange coalition symbols. "We figured out their basic communication frequencies," Lisa explained as Mason inspected the bridge. "They use a kind of quantum entanglement for instant messaging across long distances. We can't replicate it, but we can tap into it. Listen." She pressed a button, and the room filled with the strange musical language of the coalition. "Can we understand what they're saying?" Mason asked. "Working on it, but we can track their ships using these signals." As if on cue, an alarm sounded. One of the technicians called out, "Coalition patrol ship approaching. ETA 3 minutes." Mason's heart raced. Everyone to emergency positions. Shut down all non-essential systems. The team had practiced this drill, knowing discovery would mean death. Lights went out. Power systems hummed to silence. Workers scrambled to hide under tarps and debris. From his position, Mason watched the sky. A sleek silver craft appeared, its smooth hull reflecting the sun as it glided over the graveyard. It was beautiful in a cold, deadly way. The ship moved slowly, sensors scanning the area. Mason held his breath as it passed directly overhead. For a terrible moment, the ship paused. Then, with a faint whine, it continued on its patrol route and disappeared over the horizon. Slowly, the team emerged from hiding. "That was too close," Rivera said, joining Mason. "We need better camouflage." Mason nodded, an idea forming. "Or we need to look like something they've already dismissed as harmless." The next day, Mason ordered the team to disguise their operation as a refugee camp. They erected tents and set up small fires, making it appear like survivors had gathered among the wreckage to salvage basic supplies. When coalition ships passed over, the workers pretended to be civilians, looking scared and disorganized. The disguise worked. Coalition patrols noted the camp but categorized it as non-threatening. Meanwhile, beneath tarps and inside the shells of broken ships, the real work continued. Emma made a breakthrough on the 10th day. "I've figured out how their shields work," she announced during the evening meeting. The team gathered around as she held up what looked like a flat silver disc. "They don't just block attacks, they absorb the energy and redirect it." "Can we build our own?" Mason asked. "Not exactly like theirs, but..." Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I think we can make something better, something they won't expect." She showed them her plans, a hybrid shield system that combined coalition energy-absorbing technology with Earth's radar jamming systems. It won't stop a direct hit from their biggest weapons, but it will confuse their targeting systems and absorb enough energy to give us a fighting chance. "How soon can you have a prototype?" Mason asked. 3 days. "Maybe 2 if I don't sleep." "Take 3, Mason said firmly. "We need you alert." On day 14, disaster struck. Rivera's team was exploring a mostly intact coalition scout ship when its self-defense systems suddenly activated. A burst of energy shot out, severely injuring 2 workers and alerting nearby coalition forces. "Patrol incoming. Multiple ships." Lisa shouted from the command center. Mason ran to the wounded men, helping carry them to safety. Everyone underground. Now, the team had built shelters beneath the wrecked ships, connected by tunnels. As coalition ships swarmed overhead, they huddled in darkness, listening to the whine of alien engines. "They'll find the work we've done," Rivera whispered, his face pale. "It's over." "No," Mason said firmly. "We prepared for this." When the first coalition troops landed to investigate, they found what appeared to be an empty camp recently abandoned. The partial ship frame Mason's team had been building was covered with other debris, looking like just another pile of wreckage. The aliens searched for nearly an hour, then left, apparently satisfied that the energy burst had simply been a system malfunction in the damaged scout ship. When the team finally emerged from hiding, they found something unexpected. The coalition troops had left the scout ship behind, apparently considering it too damaged to salvage. "It's mostly intact," Emma said, running her hands over the alien vessel's hull. "Engine, weapons, navigation." Mason smiled. "Get it underground. Now." By the end of the third week, the shape of their warship had changed completely. Using the coalition scout ship as a core, they had built outward, adding Earth tech where needed but keeping the alien systems as the heart. "It's working," Emma said with tired amazement as the ship's main power came online for the first time. Lights flickered across the makeshift bridge. Screens lit up. A gentle hum filled the air as the hybrid systems synchronized. Rivera looked at the readouts. Power at 60% and holding steady. No detectable emissions that would give us away. He turned to Mason with the first real smile anyone had seen on his face in weeks. "We might actually pull this off." Mason walked around the bridge, touching the mismatched panels and jury-rigged controls. It wasn't pretty. Exposed wires ran along walls. Earth keyboards sat next to alien touch panels. But it worked. "What should we call her?" Lisa asked. Mason thought for a moment, looking at the ship they had built from broken pieces and desperate hope. "Phoenix," he said. "We'll call her Phoenix." As if responding to its name, the ship's lights brightened slightly. 7 days remained until the coalition's deadline. Their impossible warship was taking flight. All systems ready for power test, Emma called out from her station. 6 days remained until the coalition's deadline, and the Phoenix was nearly complete. Mason stood in the center of the bridge, looking at the nervous faces of his crew. Everything they had built over the past weeks came down to this moment. If the ship's systems couldn't work together, they had no chance against the coalition. "Begin the test," Mason ordered. Emma nodded and pressed a sequence of buttons. The lights dimmed momentarily, then came back brighter. A low hum filled the ship as power flowed through the hybrid systems. "Main power at 30%, Emma reported. 40%. 50. The screens around the bridge flickered to life, showing a mix of Earth readouts and alien symbols. Lisa worked quickly at her station, translating the alien text. "Shields online," she said. "Weapons systems charging." Rivera monitored the power flow. 60%. 70. A small tremor ran through the ship. Mason steadied himself against a console. "What was that?" Emma frowned at her readings. "Power fluctuation. The coalition systems are drawing more energy than expected." "Can you stabilize it?" "Working on it." Her fingers flew over the controls. 80%. 85. The tremors grew stronger. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Something's wrong," Rivera said urgently. "The power systems aren't harmonizing." Before Emma could respond, a surge of energy ripped through the ship. Sparks flew from consoles. The lights flashed blinding white, then went dark. Mason was thrown to the floor as a massive boom echoed through the hull. When he got to his feet, emergency lights bathed the bridge in dim red. Smoke filled the air. "Report," he shouted. "Is everyone okay?" Lisa emerged from beneath her damaged console, coughing. "I'm all right." "Engine rooms hit bad." Rivera's voice came through the static-filled communicator. 3 injured. We need medics down here." Mason helped Emma up from where she had fallen. "What happened?" Her face was streaked with soot, her expression devastated. "Power feedback loop. The alien technology. It's designed to work in harmony. Our Earth systems disrupted the flow." She looked at the darkened screens. "We've blown half the power relays. We're set back days, maybe more." Mason felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Days they didn't have. 2 hours later, the damage assessment was complete. The Phoenix's main power grid was fried. 3 crew members were in the medical bay with burns and electrical injuries. The weapons systems were offline. The leadership team gathered in what remained of the bridge. "Can we fix it?" Mason asked. Emma rubbed her tired eyes. "Yes, but not quickly. We need to rewire the entire power distribution system. The coalition technology is more sensitive than I realized." "How long?" "At least 4 days. Maybe 5. 5 days. The deadline would arrive before they were ready." Lisa looked up suddenly from her tablet. "Captain, I'm picking up increased coalition communications. A lot of activity." "Put it on speaker." The strange musical language of the aliens filled the room. Though they couldn't understand the words, the urgent tone was clear. "They're excited about something," Lisa said, studying the translation algorithms she'd been developing. "I'm getting fragments, energy spike, unusual readings." Mason's blood ran cold. The power surge. They detected it. Rivera checked the radar. Multiple signals approaching. Fast. Mason made a split-second decision. "Prepare for emergency launch." "Launch." Emma stared at him. "Jack, the ship isn't ready. We're out of time. If we stay here, they'll find us for sure." He turned to the crew. "Get all essential personnel on board. Everyone else evacuates to the backup location. The systems aren't stable." Emma protested. "Then we'll have to stabilize them in flight," Mason said grimly. "Rivera, get down to engineering. Do what you can to get us partial power." As the crew rushed to their stations, Mason helped evacuate the non-essential personnel. Scientists, support staff, and injured crew members were loaded onto small boats to be taken to a hidden cave system several miles away. Lisa monitored the approaching coalition ships. 5 minutes until they're in visual range. "Status." Mason called to Emma as he returned to the bridge. "Partial power restored. Engines at 40%. Shields at 20%. She didn't look up from her frantic work. "Weapons offline. It'll have to do. All stations, prepare for launch." The ship shuddered as the makeshift engines came to life. Years of salvage work had taught Mason that sometimes things had to break completely before they could be fixed right. He just hoped the Phoenix would hold together long enough. "Coalition ships entering visual range," Lisa warned. "Launch now," Mason ordered. With a groan of straining metal, the Phoenix rose from its hiding place. Pieces of camouflage tarp fell away as the ungainly vessel broke free of the water. Its hull was a patchwork of Earth Navy gray and coalition silver, with exposed wiring and hastily welded plates covering gaps. "They've spotted us," Lisa reported. 3 coalition scout ships changing course to intercept. Mason took his place in the captain's chair. "Full power to engines. Get us into the cloud cover." The Phoenix climbed awkwardly into the sky, trailing small bits of debris as loosely attached components shook in the acceleration. The coalition scouts followed, their sleek forms cutting through the air with perfect precision. "They're charging weapons," Lisa called out. "Evasive maneuvers," Mason ordered. Rivera's voice came through the comm from engineering. "The engines can't take hard turns yet." The first shot from a coalition ship flashed past them, a beam of intense blue energy that missed by meters. "Return fire," Mason ordered. "Weapons still offline," Emma replied, working frantically at her station. Another shot hit the Phoenix's side. The ship shuddered, but held together. "Shields at 15%, Lisa reported. "One more direct hit, and we're done." Mason's mind raced. They couldn't outrun the coalition ships. They couldn't fight back. But maybe. "Emma, is the EMP device operational?" Her head snapped up. "The prototype. It's barely been tested. Can you activate it?" She hesitated for just a second before nodding. "Rerouting emergency power now." The EMP device had been Emma's side project, a weapon designed to disrupt coalition systems without destroying them. It used their own technology against them, creating a pulse that would overload their sensitive power networks. "Coalition ships closing to finish us," Lisa warned. "Firing range in 10 seconds. Charging EMP," Emma called. 5 seconds. 4, 3. The lead coalition ship fired again. The beam struck the Phoenix directly. Shields failing. Lisa shouted. Now, Emma. Emma slammed her hand down on the activation control. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of invisible energy pulsed out from the Phoenix in all directions. The coalition ships faltered. Their lights flickered and died. Their engines sputtered and failed. All three began dropping from the sky like stones. It worked. Emma cried in disbelief. The Phoenix wasn't unaffected. More systems went dark as the pulse hit their own alien components, but the Earth technology, cruder and more resilient, kept the essential systems running. The nearest ship is going down 2 miles east, Lisa reported. Minimal damage to its hull. Mason saw their opportunity. Set course to intercept. Prepare a boarding party. As the Phoenix limped toward the fallen coalition scout, Mason felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. They had just taken down 3 enemy ships without firing a single conventional shot. Maybe, just maybe, this crazy plan could actually work. The Phoenix hovered near the downed coalition scout ship. It had crashed in a shallow part of the ocean, its sleek silver hull now half submerged in water. Mason led the boarding party himself, taking Emma, Rivera, and 4 others with combat experience. Remember, Mason told the team as they prepared to board, "We need information more than we need a fight. Get to their command center and download whatever you can." They crossed to the alien vessel on a makeshift bridge extended from the Phoenix. The coalition ship's entry hatch had been damaged in the crash, allowing them to pry it open manually. Inside, emergency lights cast an eerie blue glow through the corridors. "This way," Emma whispered, following readings on her tablet. Power core and main systems should be straight ahead. They moved carefully through the ship, weapons ready. The layout was strange. Corridors curved in unexpected ways, and doors seemed to appear and disappear depending on the angle you viewed them from. "Where's the crew?" Rivera asked, looking around nervously. Mason was wondering the same thing. "Stay alert." They found their answer in the command center. 3 coalition aliens lay unconscious at their stations. They were tall and thin, with 4-fingered hands, and the same blue-gray skin Mason had seen in transmissions. "The EMP must have affected them somehow," Emma said, examining one of the aliens from a safe distance. "Their suits have some kind of tech built in. Maybe life support." "Will they wake up?" Mason asked. "Eventually, I think. But we have time." Emma and Lisa got to work on the ship's systems. The alien technology responded to their touch surprisingly well, almost as if it was designed to be intuitive to any species. "I'm in," Emma announced after several minutes. "Their database is vast." Her eyes widened as she scrolled through information. "Jack, look at this." Mason leaned over her shoulder. The screen showed what appeared to be a map of the coalition fleet positions. Dozens of ships surrounded Earth, with one massive vessel at the center. "That has to be their command ship," Mason said. "The Dominion, according to these labels." Lisa was working at another console. "I'm finding something interesting in their communications," she said. "There seems to be disagreement among the coalition species." "Disagreement?" Mason moved to her station. "From what I can translate, not all of the coalition wanted to attack Earth. Several species advocated for peaceful contact, but they were overruled by the dominant military faction." "That could be useful," Mason said thoughtfully. "What else can you find?" For the next hour, they downloaded everything they could from the alien databases. Technical specifications, communication protocols, fleet movements, and most valuable of all, command codes. "We need to move," Rivera warned, checking his watch. "More coalition ships will come looking for these scouts soon." As they prepared to leave, Mason paused by the unconscious aliens. In another life, under different circumstances, perhaps humans, and these beings could have been friends. Maybe they still could be. "Let's go," he said finally. Back aboard the Phoenix, the team worked frantically to repair damage from the power surge while incorporating their new intelligence. The Coalition scout ship had been a treasure trove of information, giving them insights they never could have discovered on their own. Their fleet is gathering in Earth orbit, Mason told the leadership team, showing the data they had retrieved. They're preparing for the final attack when the deadline expires tomorrow. What's our plan? Rivera asked. Even with the repairs, we can't beat them in a straight fight. We're not going to, Mason replied. We're going to use their own systems against them. He outlined his strategy. Using the command codes they had stolen, they would mimic Coalition signals to create confusion in their ranks. The Phoenix would approach the massive Dominion flagship under cover of this chaos, deploy specialized disruptors, and target the command structure. It's not about destroying their fleet, Mason explained. It's about disrupting their chain of command long enough to deliver a message. Emma looked skeptical. What message? That humans aren't as easy to conquer as they thought. As Earth's deadline approached, governments worldwide prepared for surrender. Most believed resistance was futile against such overwhelming technology. They didn't know about the Phoenix, hiding in the Pacific, and preparing for one desperate mission. Mason stood on the bridge, watching his crew work. In the past few hours, they had transformed the ship. Coalition technology had been more fully integrated with Earth systems. The power fluctuations were under control. Weapons were online, though limited. Most importantly, they had communication systems that could mimic Coalition signals perfectly. Fleet status? Mason asked. Lisa studied her screen. Coalition ships moving into attack formation. The Dominion is coordinating from high orbit. Our status? Emma checked the ship's systems. Power at 85%. Shields at 60%. Weapons at 40%. Enough for 1 or 2 good shots. Special packages ready for deployment. These special packages were Emma's creation. Repurposed satellites loaded with disruptive technology designed to scramble Coalition communications. Prepare for launch, Mason ordered. Stealth mode until we're in position. The Phoenix rose from the ocean, its systems running as quietly as possible. Unlike the hasty escape days before, this launch was controlled and deliberate. The ship's makeshift stealth systems, combined with Coalition technology, rendered it nearly invisible to standard scans. They climbed through the atmosphere, the blue sky gradually darkening to the black of space. Earth spread out below them, beautiful and vulnerable. Coalition fleet in visual range, Lisa reported. Through the main viewport, Mason could see them, dozens of silver ships arranged in perfect formation around the Dominion. The flagship was enormous, at least 10 times the size of any other vessel. Begin transmission, Mason ordered. Emma activated the communication system they had built using stolen Coalition technology, transmitting false retreat orders now. The effect was almost immediate. Several smaller Coalition ships broke formation, moving away from their assigned positions. Confusion spread through the fleet as contradictory orders followed. It's working, Rivera said with surprise in his voice. Launch disruption packages, Mason ordered. The Phoenix released 12 small satellites, each programmed to further scramble Coalition communications by broadcasting on their secure frequencies. As they activated, more Coalition ships began moving erratically, unable to distinguish real orders from false ones. Take us in closer to the Dominion, Mason said. Prepare main weapons. The Phoenix moved toward the massive flagship, still partially obscured by the chaos they had created. They were halfway there when everything changed. We've been detected, Lisa shouted. The Dominion is scanning us directly. A beam of intense energy shot from the flagship, striking the Phoenix. The ship shuddered violently. Shields down to 30%, Emma reported. They've adapted to our signal disruption. Another blast hit them, even more powerful than the first. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems failed. Engines hit. Rivera called from engineering. We're losing power. Return fire, Mason ordered. The Phoenix fired its main weapon, a hybrid of Earth missiles and Coalition energy technology. The blast struck the Dominion, but its powerful shields absorbed the impact with barely a flicker. No effect, Lisa reported grimly. A third hit from the Dominion sent the Phoenix spinning. Life support systems failed across half the ship. The bridge filled with smoke as consoles overloaded. "We can't take another hit like that," Emma said, working frantically to reroute power. Mason looked at the massive Coalition flagship through the cracked viewport. They had come so far, risked so much, only to fail at the final moment. Or had they? "Emma," he said suddenly, "is the handshake ready?" Emma's eyes widened. The handshake was theoretical. We never had time to test it. "Is it ready?" She hesitated, then nodded. "The basic program is loaded. But Jack, it's a one-way trip. We'd have to get much closer to the Dominion." Mason looked at his crew, brave, brilliant people who had accomplished the impossible. "Then that's what we'll do." He took the helm controls himself as the Dominion prepared to fire again. "All power to engines. We're going in." The Phoenix raced toward the Dominion, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from its damaged hull. Coalition weapons fire flashed past them as smaller enemy ships tried to intercept, but Mason's piloting, erratic and unpredictable, kept them moving forward. "Distance to target?" Mason asked, his hands tight on the controls. 2,000 meters in closing, Lisa reported. "Their weapons are charging for another shot." "Emma, status on the handshake." Emma was hunched over her station, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Program loaded. I need to be within 500 meters to deploy." The handshake was Emma's most brilliant and dangerous creation, a complex program that could infiltrate Coalition systems through their own communication networks. Unlike a crude virus or simple hack, the handshake was designed to introduce itself as a friendly system, then gradually take control. It was named for the way it would gently shake hands with alien technology rather than attacking it outright. "Rivera, can you give me more speed?" Mason called to engineering. "I'm rerouting emergency power now." Rivera's voice came back strained. "But Captain, the engines are close to overload." A blast from a Coalition cruiser caught the Phoenix's left side, sending it spinning. Mason fought with the controls as warning alarms blared across the bridge. Life support failing in sections 3 through 6. Lisa called out, "Hull breach on deck 2. "Seal it off," Mason ordered. "Everyone, hold on." He pushed the Phoenix into a steep dive, then pulled up sharply, disorienting the tracking systems of the Coalition ships. The maneuver brought them directly toward the underside of the massive Dominion. 1,000 meters, Lisa counted down. 800. A massive energy beam shot from the Dominion, barely missing them. 700 meters. "They're preparing to fire again," warned Rivera. 600 meters. "Emma, stand by," Mason said, his voice steady despite the chaos. 500 meters in 3, 2, 1. "Now," Emma shouted, activating the handshake. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, throughout the Dominion, lights flickered. Its weapons powered down mid-charge. "It's working," Emma whispered in disbelief. "The handshake is connecting to their systems." On the view screen, Mason could see confusion spreading through the Coalition fleet. Some ships stopped moving entirely. Others drifted out of formation. "What exactly is happening?" Mason asked. Emma's eyes were fixed on her screen, watching data flow. "The handshake isn't destroying their systems. It's convincing them to join us. Their technology is highly adaptive, designed to sync with other systems. We're using that against them." Coalition communication chatter increased dramatically, the musical language now sounding urgent and alarmed. "The Dominion's central systems are resisting," Emma reported. "They have better protection than we anticipated." Mason saw his opening. "Take us closer. Let's dock directly with their command deck." "Dock?" Rivera stared at him. "Are you insane?" "The handshake needs direct access to their main systems," Emma explained. understanding Mason's plan. From there, we can complete the infiltration. All power to forward shields, Mason ordered. We're going in. The Phoenix accelerated toward the Dominion's command section. The massive ship fired defensive weapons, but many failed to activate properly as the handshake spread through its systems. Impact in 10 seconds, Lisa warned. Brace for collision. Mason aimed for what looked like a docking port on the side of the command deck. Come on, old girl, he muttered to the Phoenix. One last push. At the last moment, something unexpected happened. The Dominion's shields parted, creating an opening exactly where the Phoenix was headed. Its docking bay doors opened. They're letting us in, Rivera said in disbelief. Emma checked her readings. The handshake is working at a deeper level than I expected. Parts of their system are already cooperating with us. The Phoenix slid into the Dominion's docking bay, coming to rest with a screech of metal on metal. Emergency clamps engage automatically, securing the human vessel to the alien flagship. Prepare boarding party, Mason ordered, grabbing his weapon. Emma, Rivera, Lisa, you're with me. We need to reach their command center and complete the handshake protocol. As they moved to the airlock, Emma handed out small devices. Attach these to any terminals you find. They'll help the handshake spread faster. The team stepped from the Phoenix onto the Dominion, weapons ready. Unlike the scout ship, this vessel was fully operational. Lights pulsed along the corridors in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. The air had a strange, sweet smell. They encountered Coalition crew members, but the aliens seemed disoriented, their movements sluggish. Some watched the humans pass with all four eyes wide, but made no move to stop them. The handshake is affecting their systems and their tech, Emma explained quietly. Remember how their suits seemed integrated with their bodies? They're experiencing the equivalent of digital vertigo. Following Emma's tracking device, they made their way through the massive ship toward its heart. The corridors grew wider, the ceiling higher. Finally, they reached a set of massive doors that slid open at their approach. Inside was the Dominion's command center, a vast circular room with a holographic display of Earth and the surrounding space at its center. Coalition officers worked at stations around the perimeter, while a single, taller alien stood on a central platform. That must be the commander, Mason whispered. The tall alien turned toward them. Unlike the others, this one showed no signs of disorientation. Its four eyes focused sharply on the human intruders. I am Admiral Vex, it said in perfect English, surprising them all. You are the humans who built a ship from broken parts, who turned our own technology against us. Mason stepped forward, weapon still ready. We are. An impressive achievement, Vex said, its voice neither friendly nor hostile. One that should not have been possible. Humans are good at doing the impossible, Mason replied, especially when our survival depends on it. Admiral Vex studied them. My military faction believed your species too primitive to deserve consideration. It seems we were mistaken. Emma moved to a nearby terminal, attaching one of her devices. The holographic display flickered, then steadied. Throughout the command center, Coalition officers stopped working, watching the confrontation. You came to deliver a message, Vex said. I am listening. Mason lowered his weapon slightly. The message is simple. Earth will not surrender. But we don't need to be enemies. You suggest an alternative. An actual coalition, Mason said. One where humans and your species work together instead of against each other. We've already proven what we can do with just scraps of your technology. Imagine what we could achieve as partners. Vex was silent for a long moment. Around them, the ship's systems seemed to pulse in rhythm with the handshake program, now fully integrated into the Dominion's network. Your solution is unexpected, Vex finally said. The more peaceful factions of the coalition will be interested in this proposal. The holographic display shifted, showing the coalition fleet standing down, weapons powering off. A ceasefire, Vex announced, while we discuss terms. 3 months later, Mason stood on a platform beside the Phoenix, now permanently docked in what had once been the Pacific Ship Graveyard. The area had been transformed into a joint human coalition research center, where scientists from both species worked to understand each other's technology and culture. The Phoenix itself had become a symbol, its mismatched hull and jury-rigged systems preserved exactly as they had been during the mission. School children and coalition younglings alike toured the vessel, learning about the day humans built a warship from junk and changed the course of history. Emma, now leading a joint technology team, joined Mason at the railing. "Still hard to believe it worked," she said. "Which part?" Mason asked with a smile. "The junk ship, the handshake, or convincing a race of super-advanced aliens to be our friends. All of it." She looked out at the research center, where humans worked alongside the blue-gray aliens. "They thought humans couldn't win." "We didn't win," Mason corrected her. "We found a better option than winning or losing." He patted the Phoenix's scared hull. "Sometimes the best ships are built from broken pieces." As the sun set over the Pacific, the Phoenix's hull gleamed golden in the fading light, a testament to humanity's greatest strength. The ability to build something extraordinary from whatever is at hand, even when facing impossible odds.